Michelle Best. I'm an English teacher, a mom, a lifelong learner, and a poet. What is a poem? A poem is a special kind of writing that has its own form and style, follows a set of rules determined by the poet, expresses an idea, emotion, or experience using vivid language in as few words as possible. Here's an example of a concrete poem. How do you know if you've written a poem? A poem does not have to rhyme, but it must have some sort of rhythm. A poem has a message or a meaning that can be understood by the reader. A poem can be short or long, but works best with shorter lines that incorporate poetic devices, and a poem looks like a poem. Mother to Son by Langston Hughes. Well, son, I'll tell you, life for me ain't been no crystal stair. It's had tacks in it and splinters and boards torn up and places with no carpet on the floor bare. But all the time I's been a climbing on and reaching landings and turning corners and sometimes going in the dark where there ain't been no light. So boy, don't you turn back. Don't you set down on the steps 'cause you finds it kinda hard. Don't you fall now, for I's still going, honey. I's still climbing, and life for me ain't been no crystal stair.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world. Now, see that look in Mr. Pitt's eye? Like 19th century literature has nothing to do with going to business school or medical school, right? Maybe. Mr. Hopkins, you may agree with them, thinking, yes, we should simply study our Mr. Pritchard and learn our rhyme and meter and go quietly about the business of achieving other ambitions. I have a little secret for you. Huddle up. Huddle up! We don't read and write poetry because it's cute. We read and write poetry because we are members of the human race, and the human race is filled with passion. And medicine, law, business, engineering, these are noble pursuits and necessary to sustain life. But poetry, beauty, romance, love, these are what we stay alive for. To quote from Whitman, "O me, O life of the questions of these recurring, of the endless trains of the faithless, of cities filled with the foolish, what good amid these, O me, O life?" Answer, that you are here, that life exists and identity, that the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. That the powerful play goes on and you may contribute a verse. What will your verse be?
What should you write about? You should write poems about what you feel deepest and hardest. Maybe remember a sad, funny, scary, or silly memory and turn it into a poem. Johnny's poem by Alden Nowlin. Look, I've written a poem, Johnny says, and hands it to me. And it's about his grandfather dying last summer and me in the hospital. And I want to cry, don't you see? Because it doesn't matter if it's not very good. What matters is he knows, and it was me, his father, who told him. You write poems about what you feel deepest and hardest. Here are some key poetic devices and terms. Use any or all of them to make your poem sing. I particularly like assonance, alliteration, and I often write free verse. Now let's look at writing a found poem. So what is a found poem? You don't have to pull the ideas out of thin air. When you're writing a found poem, you use pre-existing text to reframe the structure as a poem. You add line breaks, you change punctuation or add punctuation, you add in poetic devices such as rhyme and rhythm and enjambment. You add to, delete, or rearrange words of the original text. Original text can come from any source, novels, manuals, speeches, letters, and oftentimes the best text is the one you write yourself. So this is a wonderful skill for new poets to use. Text. So here's a poem I wrote off of a very brief biography about my own grandmother, Dorothy Best. Counting on Grandma Dorothy. My grandma died when she was 93. In her first year of life, her parents gave her up. They left the country. At 16, she left school, got married, had 11 children. Her husband was 10 years older, abusive, and belligerent. Her husband died when her youngest was 3, leaving 6 mouths to feed on a meager seamstress salary. When my father, the 10th, was 17, almost grown, my grandmother moved to Canada in search of a better life and a new home. Life in Canada was, at first, hard, cold, and sad, but determination and education created opportunity she never thought she would have. At 65, she went back to school. Nursing was her calling. She graduated with honors and worked until 85, earning a full pension before retiring. My grandmother had to struggle, but managed to find joy in life. She supported her children, she paid her bills, and LOL in times of strife. People are our inspiration during times of difficulty and duress, so I will always know that comfort will come when I remember the life of my grandmother, or Grandma Dorothy Bess. I just took this poem, as I said, from the text over here. Now I'll leave you with one of my favorite Robert Frost poems, as well as one of my favorite films, The Outsiders.
Golly, that was sure pretty, huh?
Yeah.
It's like the mist is what's pretty, you know? All gold and silver.
Mm-hmm.
Too bad it can't stay like that all the time.
Nothing gold can stay.
Huh?
Nature's for screen is gold. Her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaves a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf. So Eden sang to grief. So dawn goes down today. Nothing gold can stay.
Where'd you learn that? That's what I meant.
Robert Frost wrote it. I always remembered it because I never quite knew what he meant by it.
I know